So maybe you're a teacher, maybe someone who's interested in becoming a teacher. You're all here for a reason, and that reason is to gain new information, to see things from new angle, to connect with each other, and share your experience with us also as well. Welcome to our webinar series, a free webinar series presented by the English Teacher Training Center, ETTC, an international center that offers a variety of English teaching, English language teaching courses. And today's webinar is gonna talk about managing students' motivation and critical thinking for a quality language education. We're gonna welcome a new speaker. Our today's speaker is a TESOL certified, a linguist, an interpreter, ESL teacher with more than 5 years of experience. And she's gonna focus on some major points, such as the importance of managing students' motivation, how to maintain a high-quality language education through effective management of motivation and critical thinking, how to promote critical thinking among learners. So before we welcome our new speaker, I would like to ask you a question, and I'd be happy if I can see your answers in the comment section. So if you ever have had an experience with your students where you saw that they really lack information, motivation, please share your experience with us. I would like to welcome our today's speaker, Maissa HAMMOUCHE. Hi, hello.
Hi.
Hello, Miss. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you.
I'm very excited for this presentation with you.
Well, me too, and I have to apologize first for the slight delay. I've been caught in some traffic I wasn't expecting.
Okay, not a big
Do you
deal.
hear me clearly?
All right, so I'm gonna leave you with our attendees. Okay, we're all ears.
Perfect. Okay, so today we're going to be speaking about strategies of managing students' motivations and critical thinking to be able to provide a quality language education. Now, I must say before we start that this is a Teacher Training 101 lesson, and we have to specify first the relationship between managing students' motivations and critical thinking, and how these two components, with a third surprise component I have for you today, can help you provide very good quality education. The first things we should know is that providing quality education comes first. So it actually precedes or must precede a teacher's motivation to teach a language. So a good classroom, motivated students, critical thinkers can help you teach them anything at all. So these strategies we're going to deal with today are not really language specific, but they can help you to the farthest extent teach a language or anything else. So we're going to start with motivation. As you all know, or as English teachers, you must know that managing students' motivation is very, very important skill for a teacher because motivation is a crucial component to help students stay focused and committed to their learning process. Now, unfortunately, especially in Nigeria, most students are not really aware of their learning processes and they don't master them. So the upcoming strategies will really teach you how to help your students be aware of their learning processes, how their learning is happening, and they will learn how to manage it throughout your courses with the teacher. Now, even when learning processes become very challenging and demanding, because this is how students generally perceive the learning, which we don't want, of course. So in this presentation, we will list a number of effective strategies that will help you motivate your students in class. The first one we will look at today is setting clear goals and expectations. Now, most of the time, I want you to try to relate to your personal experiences of learning languages or any type of learning as we go on with this presentation, because it will help you understand more. Now, the first thing we said was setting clear goals and expectations. We all can remember when we first sat on classroom chairs, not knowing what we're expecting from the teacher to say, how we are expecting the teacher to behave, or what are we going to learn. Now, this is a very big red flag for students because it makes them very anxious about their studies, and it only makes things worse for what comes up right after. Now, therefore, it's very important to set very clear and achievable goals for students that will allow them to have a sense of purpose and direction. So direction is very important for students to know what they're going to deal with. And so this will help them really focus on what they need to achieve, know what they're learning and what they are supposed to learn, and what they should expect from their teachers. Additionally, we should make sure that these students understand what is expected of them to do. What are they going to be tested on, or what is asked of them in the classroom. And this only happens when the teacher actually is able to provide them with regular feedback on their progress. So after telling them what they are supposed to do in the classroom, what they are going to learn in that class, they should also be provided with information about their progress and their performance after class. Now, the second point that will really help students be very motivated to come to classroom is the authentic and relevant materials used in the classroom. Of course, we all have been through that feeling when we sit in a classroom and we don't even know why are we being taught that subject or that topic or that class. It is very important for a good teacher, a skillful practitioner, to choose wisely the materials and the topics they teach in their classrooms in order to help their students see the relevance of these topics and the usefulness of these information in their everyday life. This will help them build interest for the topics and follow closely. Point number 3 in motivating students is to make learning fun and engaging. Now, we have to know that teaching fun topics or interesting topics is not enough, because the way we do it is also very important. So just right after choosing a very interesting topic, we should also know how to make the fun or the lesson enjoyable and fun, and we should not make it look like a chore. So to give you some ideas how to implement this, you should consider more activities and less testing, less assessment, less direct instructions in the classroom, and rather make it sound or feel like an actual life experience. Point number 4, encouraging peer interaction. Now, we as teachers also most of the time tend to think that we are the only source of information in a given classroom, but we should sometimes humble ourselves and admit that that is not the case, because students tend to learn more of their fellow students or peers than they actually do from the teacher. So most of the time, we should use their peers to teach them more. Therefore, I really advise you as teachers to be more flexible in a given classroom and allow them to speak more, allow them to connect with their peers more, and also create activities that engage them in groups or in pairs. Point number 5 for motivating your classroom is to recognize and reward progress. This is somehow related to our first point today. When we said that we are supposed to give our students feedback after a class or after their performance, we have to note that students really need to feel appreciated and to feel that their efforts are recognized, so they could be in a very positive atmosphere and feel free to express themselves more and engage more. Of course, we know it's simple, it's very human. Every human being who feels unwelcomed, unrecognized, and unappreciated in a given atmosphere, they feel more an urge to leave that place. And we should absolutely revert the situation. Some ways to do so is to provide them with certificates, badges, or even just the least effort we can do is just to praise them after their performance. Our sixth point in motivating students, and our very last, is to build a positive classroom environment. Now, this point, I chose to leave this point to the end because I thought that this is really a global overview of all what have been said before. Because all what we have said before, the 5 previous points, are components to build a positive classroom environment. And again, I have to insist it really relies on the teacher. So a positive and supportive classroom environment can go a long way motivating students. Teachers should encourage students to express themselves. This is very, very, very important because most of the processes of learning go through expressing oneself and actually engaging in a given activity. We will detail this point further down. Point number 2 is to respect. They have to feel respected and they have to feel appreciated and loved. And this is not enough. It's not enough to only love your students or make them feel appreciated yourself as a teacher, but also you have to install a given environment or atmosphere between them and their peers also by modeling some behaviors in front of them. Another thing is to celebrate diversity, and this is very a real key element in building very positive environment. You have to teach them how to celebrate their difference. You have to give them self-confidence. You have to make them understand that being different is not bad. Being different is good. So they will have more self-confidence to express themselves and be very upcoming. Now, all these mixed together with the right ratios will make them feel valued and very motivated to learn. In conclusion, motivation is a key factor in successful language learning. We'll go through the previous points all together by setting clear goals of teaching or learning and expectations of what is going to be learned, using authentic real-life materials that relate to their everyday life, and making them very engaging and encouraging peer interaction all together in a very positive classroom environment. Now, when we say positive teaching, positive environment, making lessons or activities engaging, we cannot forget a very basic information that really helps teachers put all that together into a successful classroom, which is learning styles. So that was our little surprise today. I thought that no teacher can actually plan a good lesson without actually knowing their students' learning styles. So I can't, unfortunately, I can't engage with you directly, so I can't ask you if you have heard of it before or not, but learning styles is actually understanding the different learning mechanisms of every human. Educators, after having that little key, that little skill, very important key skill, can tailor their teaching methods, their way of building their lesson plan or their lesson to better meet the needs of their students. Now, I did not allow so much time to, or devote so much time to students' needs. I suppose that most teachers know how to assess student needs, but based on that, every teacher must know their students' learning styles to be able to provide a variety of learning experiences that cater to different learning styles. Now, we have to know what's a learning style. So a learning style refers to a way that an individual processes in their minds to retain, analyze, or learn any information. And you have to know that this field is a vast field. I do advise you on checking or researching it. But in general, all humans fall into three main categories in terms of learning styles. So first we have the visual learners, and simply put, visual learners are students or learners who learn visually with visual aid. That is to say, if you want to teach a visual learner, you have to write on the board, you have to provide them with diagrams, charts, draw, show them videos, but they have to use their eyes. You have to give them visual cues they can use to remember, to relate to a memory and remember that piece of information under a visual format. Now, type 2 or category 2 of learners are auditory learners. Personally, that's my case. And later on, I'm going to explain to you how knowing your type of multiple intelligency or learning style can really help you focus your studies and help you learn easily. Now, auditory learners are learners who prefer to be taught using spoken explanations, using discussions, and speaking in general. So it has to go through the ear. So for these types of learners, it is better to engage them in very different discussions in the classroom. Type 3, which is our last category, is the kinesthetic learners. The kinesthetic learners, now I know kinesthetic is a word that is a bit far from touching, but it is about touching. So we also call it hands-on approach. And for teachers who are specialized with children or specialized in children teaching, this is a very effective way of teaching in teaching English to children, especially. So hands-on approach, as it may imply, it means a physical activity. So these type of students must touch things or play with things physically so they can learn something or integrate an experience. Now, the very interesting part about this is that when you hear this, you might think that every person has only one multiple intelligency or learning style, but it's not the case. Actually, every human has a preferred learning style, but that does not mean that it is the only way they can learn, but it is their preferred way of learning. So, as a teacher in a given classroom that could be very mixed sometimes in terms of learning styles, it is very advisable to combine a variety of learning styles to maximize the learning of your students. Now, this is also important, and you might ask yourself, how is this related to students' motivations? But actually, it is at the core of student motivation, because when you are speaking a different language, you lose your students' attention or motivation. When you are writing to an auditory learner, you are losing their motivation and interest. So a combination of learning style engaging activities can keep all of your students together motivated. Now, our last or third part of our presentation today is fostering critical thinking. Now, from my humble point of view, I think that fostering critical thinking is the main point, together with motivating students, that can actually make a very significant result, or actually is directly related to providing a quality education. Now, because I believe that stimulating critical thinking is essential to a teacher's role in motivating intelligent students. Because what most of classrooms nowadays suffer from is the teachers focusing on the lowest grades, or let's say the medium students, and by doing so, they either lose the last students in the classroom, or the first ones, or the brilliant ones, which makes it a very unequal teaching, unfair teaching. Therefore, fostering critical thinking in your classroom can help making your students more intelligent with time, and creating a high quality learning environment for them by helping them develop their intellectual and cognitive skills, all in all. So here we have a few strategies. So we're gonna see 5 quick strategies to actually foster critical thinking in your classroom and stimulate their intellectual, let's say, cognitive skills. So point number 1 is to encourage open-ended questions. So instead of asking them yes/no questions, try to make your questions more opened, and try to ask them deeper questions that requires them to perform some analysis or interpretation, rather than just asking a direct question that makes them only recall learned information. Point number 2, which is to promote analysis and evaluation. So this is directly related to question number 1. So analysis and evaluation fosters critical thinking. So you should always ask your students to analyze, evaluate, argument, or just give their point of view over a situation or a certain condition, instead of just giving them direct information. Point number 3, to foster debate and discussion. This is highly related to motivating students, especially the auditory ones, because debate and discussion fosters. It is, first of all, it's very interesting for language teaching, because it's a speaking exercise or practice. Also, at the same time, it will help them have more values and a classroom, better classroom management for the teacher, since it trains them to listen to each other's idea and challenge assumptions. 4, to provide opportunities for problem solving. So think of some math classes. Think of some somewhat complex ideas to feed your students' brains and their analytical and solving problem skills. 5, and our last point today, is to encourage reflection. So this is really related to motivating your students, because it really puts them at the heart of their learning processes. They are no longer a passive reception. They're no longer passive points or people in their learning process, but they are really at the heart of it and very engaged and aware of it. So teachers should help students develop their critical thinking by encouraging them to reflect on their own learning and thought processes. To give you a very concrete example of this, why not have actually you students learn about their own learning styles and their own learning processes? You could also integrate some activities in your classroom or outside of the classroom as a homework by having them journal, for example, write what they learned, what was each of the class. Sorry? Okay, we're practically done. Just give me a minute with that, okay? Also, self-assessment. This helps with values and also with assessing their own learning progress. And finally, group discussion, and that is all. So this pack ought to make your students independent and very analytical and great critical thinkers. Okay, as a conclusion, we should say that providing quality education, so my message for you today is that providing quality education does not really require a teacher to know everything. As an English teacher or a language teacher, you should not learn all English words or know everything about English, but rather you should untraditionally be a skilled, open-minded practitioner. When you say open-minded, means you should be in constant research for better ways and skills that can help your classroom grow bigger. And you should know how to mix the right ratio of the strategies up mentioned to be able to maintain your students' interest, to be able to maintain their motivation levels, and to master their learning styles, because it's very important for the teacher's efficiency and multiple intelligences, and also always striving at the same time to improve their critical thinking and their language skills at once. All in all, to provide them with quality language or any type of other education. That was all for me, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. It was really interesting. Let's see our poll result here. We have, for the first poll, we have 36% that voted for visual. They prefer to teach visual learner. And this 25 for the second option, and only 13% for the third option. So what do you think about
I think there is
Ms. Hammouche?
Yeah, I think there is a great thing that they can actually assess their learning style. But I insist again, it's very interesting to teach their students how to assess their learning styles and to be able to assess their students' learning styles to begin with.
All right. So even in the second vote, what type of learner are you? The majority voted, and that there are visual learners. So the majority are visual learners, and they prefer to teach visual learners. Could you give us some 3 questions that you ask to identify a visual learner?
Actually, there are some very simple tests that everyone could go through on the internet. They could also make their students go through in a given classroom. So all you have to do is to use 3 different learning teaching styles and then assess the students after every way. And this will help you determine who is visual, who is auditory, and who's kinesthetic. For example, you could have, for example, pick a topic and first teach it using a diagram, you writing on the board, etc., and then give them a quick assessment and then you will at once determine who the first ones to understand are visual people. Then you can go through the process again, just explaining verbally, and you're going to see that another number of students understood. So the second number of students are auditory people. Third, but now kinesthetic is a little complex or difficult as the levels go up, because you're going to have to find something touchy or physical to test with.
All right. So we are the ETTC, and let's know. Let us let you know who we are. Let's watch the video.
Are you a self-taught teacher who wants to get certified? Are you a novice teacher who wants to gain more experience? Are you a veteran teacher who wants a teaching update? Look no further than ETTC, the International Standard Training Center. Various programs that you can choose from, designed to help you achieve your goals. Exciting curriculums and fruitful workshops, both online and on-site. Latest technological aids, the best up-to-date training. Ready to take the next step? Do not miss the opportunity to boost your career.
So we are into the Q&A section.
All right, so speaking of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, now we today in this presentation we have focused more on the teacher's role to motivate students, but if we are to speak about intrinsic motivation, then supposedly your students are supposed to come to school already intrinsically motivated to learn, and if that is not the case, then it is abnormal. So the teacher might here act like a social or a psychological helper in the classroom and try to consider some one-to-ones, or try to consolidate the students' intrinsic motivation, and actually hold some sort of survey to understand why is that particular student not motivated to learn, because I think that this is somewhat an individual problem. Because let's be funny a little bit. If all of your classroom is not intrinsically motivated to come to class, then you're not a good teacher. So it has to be discussed one-to-one with the student. Learning styles is one of the key points that must be determined at the beginning of any series of classes. That is, for example, a semester or so of teaching. Together with the curriculum presentation, every teacher should hold needs analysis, as we referred to earlier, and determining learning styles can happen through a simple test, as we said, just to use different methods of teaching. One focuses on visuals, one focuses on auditory explanations, audios, and discussions. The other one is physical total response, that is physical, kinesthetic, and then every single time with an assessment you can determine who are the elements in your classroom who understand more than others. This will help you classify or categorize them into your learning styles. As we referred to again in our presentation, the best advice could be to actually first determine your learning styles in a classroom, then create a very complete, let's say, and simply put, combine the different learning styles into your class activities. That is to say, for example, if my first discussion, so the discussion we know it engages auditory people. So the next one should not be auditory. The second activity must be visual. For example, I'd ask them to write on the board or draw a diagram or something like that. The third one, the other activity must be kinesthetic. It must be about touching something, making something manually or so. In this way, a teacher could ensure that all types of learning styles are covered in his or her classroom. Actually, from my humble experience with languages, to know that I'm a polyglot and I have spoke English and several other languages for so long, I have understood that knowing a language or being very efficient in a language is not directly related to the number of words. Language is a dynamic phenomenon, a human phenomenon. And if we can't keep up with it, that is, we cannot know all the words in English or in a given language. Therefore, to be a good teacher, from my point of view, is to master the language to a certain extent, but also master teaching strategies and skills to a certain extent to be able to pass on the information that you have, even if it's a limited information, rather than learning the dictionary by heart but not having the necessary tools to pass on the knowledge. Actually, this is something about the brain, so it's very scientific and it's neurological. So I'm afraid not most of the time, because a learning style is we just learn it. Let me give you a concrete example. Just like a baby, when they first start to walk, the brain remembers how the baby walked for the first time and keeps repeating it. Same thing goes with the learning styles. The learning styles are neural pathways created in our brain that help that they are the first way the brain learned. So the brain will remember how it learned the first time and keep repeating the same process. So most of the time, or generally, humans almost never shift learning styles because it is just the way their brain function. So some brains rely on the ears more, some brains rely on the eyes more, etc. So it's not something we can shift, but I think that if a human being can really focus on a given strategy, they might relearn a new way of learning. So they can develop a new learning strategy. But from my humble point of view, I do advise you to get in touch with your learning strategies and styles and develop them more, because as we said in the presentation, you alternate between the learning styles moving on with your lesson plan. If your activity A engages visual people or learners, then your activity B should at all times engage auditory people, then kinesthetic, then you go around if you have so many activities in your classroom. Okay, as we said already, earlier, sorry, um, um, intrinsic motivations could sometimes be lost because of individual problems or social situations, etc., that come from out of the classroom. So in this case, a student should engage into a one-to-one conversation with that student, or try to solve this problem with the student outside of the classroom to understand what they are expecting from the teacher in a classroom. So as we said earlier, then when a teacher comes to the classroom, he must define to their students or to his or her students his bullet points, expectations from the student, how they should behave and what they are going to learn and what is expected from them. Also, this could happen not in the other way around. So a teacher could go to a student and ask them, what are you expecting from this classroom? What would you like to learn? And why isn't that content or that given class interest you? What can we do to change it? Also, a very good strategy I have used before, and it's very engaging, is to actually engage your students, like after engaging your students in their own learning process, by asking them, how much did you learn today? What can we change to make it better? You can have your students help you build your lesson plan in a way that the lesson plan will come to their likings, will motivate them, and will actually make your classroom much more manageable. That's a very amazing one. It's an amazing one because when you first introduce your students to critical thinking strategies in the classroom, you might sense a little bit of resistance because mainly students are not really used to it, especially in Algeria. They are very used to learning by heart, repeating, and they are really used. That is, the only thing asked of them in the classroom is what they already dealt with or what they already studied. So information recalling. Now, after this little moment or maybe a period of resistance, you will see that your students will start to develop a critical thinking by being more open to analysis questions, to researching, and to whatever open-ended questions you have for them. A little time in, you will start noticing that your students have much more background information than before, and they will start to engage themselves into some analytical or critical thinking activities in the classroom. It's just like difficulty. Whenever we start with something new, it seems that it's very difficult, but with time, we will start mastering it and it becomes easier in the classroom. Same thing goes with critical thinking activities. In the beginning, you will perceive that your students are resistant and they find it difficult, but with time, they will get a lot better in those activities, critical thinking activities.
I think that our speaker lost the network.
So, dear attendees, I want to remind you that we have a Telegram channel, the English Teacher Training Center, ETTC. There's a link that Ms. Boomerdes will, there's a button that Ms. Boomerdes will make appear here. So by joining our channel, Telegram channel, you'll get the chance to stay up to date on the latest ETTC event. So soon, there will be a special event on site called the Meet ETC. So if you want to be our special guest speaker at the Meet ETC, please join our channel to have the link and fill in the form. If you have any other questions to ask, you can reach us on our social media platforms in the question section. We'll be happy to answer all of them. And if you want to really elevate your English language teaching skills, do not hesitate to join the Telegram channel and get even free material that you cannot find elsewhere. I hope you really you enjoyed this webinar and gained new ideas, and so excited to be with you at another webinar channel. Oh my God, I'm fasting. So see you next week at another webinar with another renewed speaker. Thank you for attending, and really it's a chance that you do not want to miss if you just click the button and join the Telegram channel.